AppNexus business in Asia Pacific. I was hired. AppNexus is a global technology company. I came to the business in 2011. I was asked to open the Seattle office for AppNexus, which was our first office outside of New York, and to build a strategic accounts function. And so that work for the next couple of years had me working with some of our largest media and marketing clients around the world as they took kind of their first couple steps into this thing called programmatic. That work brought me and my family, wife and 3 kids to Australia about 2 years ago. And since I got here, I've had the great fortune of working with many of you. And AppNexus as a platform watches and works with both buyers and sellers, so I've spent time with Australia's largest media companies as well as Australia's largest agencies. And it's given me a really good, I think, a good vantage point into the challenges that both types of businesses are facing today. And the previous panel summarized them well. So a couple weeks ago at the IAB Leadership Summit, the first IAB Leadership Summit that was held outside the US, here in Sydney, I actually gave a presentation called Hard Things Done Right. And in that presentation, I asserted that we're in the midst of the most disruptive period in advertising's history, and that disruption is being driven by technology. So, yeah, that's not actually that controversial a statement, right? I think we all agree with that, so good job, Dave. But I also said, and what I think is controversial, is that the companies that are operating the technology that's driving this disruption are not working in the interests of agencies and publishers. And publishers and agencies, as a result, need to adapt in very fundamental ways, down to the core people inside the companies, as well as the approach to market in order to win. And that was the thrust of the presentation, to do the hard things and to do them right. And I think that the previous panel said, we know what we need to do, but we're just not doing that. And I think that this statement from one of our earliest investors sums it up. This stuff takes courage, and it takes big leaders, and that's why I wanted to talk about this in this room. But anyway, I'd given this idea, like, here's what media agencies need to do. And Randall Rothenberg, who's the CEO of the IAB based out of the US, stopped me at the end of the presentation and said, well, that's great, Dave. Like, that's a nice rosy picture. The agencies need to do these 3 things, but where the hell are they going to get the money to actually do this? The model's broken, right? And we heard procurement mentioned a couple times. And you know how you structure these presentations specifically to avoid Q&A? Like, I had the red light blinking, and I'm like, I'm off the stage, and then Randall throws this landmine out there. I'm like, thanks a lot, Randall. It's an impossible question. So I kind of babbled about something for a minute. But it got me, and it got me thinking over the last couple weeks, like, that's nice. So here's these things that agencies need to do, but where is the money going to come from? Like, where are you actually going to fund the types of people and the types of change that you need in order to evolve? And so I wanted to share some thoughts this morning, sorry, it's not afternoon, with this group, because you guys are the best people to provide some feedback. So 3 things I want to do is first, again, contextualize the challenge. So that the attitudes in the market are that agencies are less and less valuable. Companies that we've surveyed, individuals we've surveyed, believe that partnerships don't matter for agencies. It's less important for you to be close to your clients and close to your media partners now than it was 5 years ago, and that those trends are going to continue. Like, these attitudes are real, and I want to explain why I think these attitudes exist. And then secondly, I want to try to paint that picture again of what I think agencies need to do to turn these attitudes around and drive some substantive change. And then the new thing is I want to describe how to fund these changes and how technology can help you rather than hurt you. And I want to talk about the things you can do now, as of today, to actually get there. So every presentation about programmatic talks about how big it is. And so I wrote those words on this slide. It's really big. It's getting bigger. And every programmatic deck has a slide that showcases the growth of programmatic, and so I made one. And so it's up and to the right. And in all seriousness, every credible piece of research shows that programmatic is going to be 50% of what we trade 1 to 2 years from now. And my personal thesis is that it's 100% of the way that we trade everything by 2020, and maybe even before. Over 2/3 of the advertising ecosystem has embraced programmatic, and agencies have definitely embraced it, and there's really good reasons for that. In a recent survey we did, we asked people, what are the 3 things that you think of most commonly when you think about this thing called programmatic, and they chose targeting and automation and real time. Targeting is always cited as the most important variable in driving better results for the advertiser. And 93% of respondents said automating repetitive tasks would be a really good thing. So there's good reasons to embrace this. So what does this have to do with this challenge, with the challenges facing the agency? And some of you have heard this before. You guys have heard this analogy of the frog in the boiling water? Some people have, so it's really fucked up. I'm sorry. But basically, it's this notion that if you toss a frog, a cute frog as it turns out, into a pot of boiling water, it'll jump out. Like, go figure, the water's hot and boiling, so I'm going to jump out. But the flip side of it goes, and I don't know who the hell tested this, by the way, but someone did at some point. The flip side of this goes, if you've got a frog, you put it in a cool pot of water, and then you turn the heat on very slowly, like the heat's going to go and go and go and boil, and eventually this frog's going to die. And so it's gross, right? Like, I don't know who would actually do this. But the analogy is relevant, I promise, because my sense is that a lot of agencies and a lot of publishers, and not all of them, but a lot of them, are actually behaving as if they're frogs in the water. And technology companies and global media companies are the ones turning up the heat. And I think it's time for a lot of these companies to jump out. So it all started off okay. Let me talk about how. It all started off okay. You have a happy agency, you have a happy client, right? And then the holding company creates this concept called the agency trading desk, and encouraged the agencies to funnel money through the agency trading desk, right? Because the agency trading desk had access to inventory that the networks, the same inventory that ad networks used to, and they could buy this inventory in the exchanges. And it's a great move, and it funneled a bunch of margin to the holding companies. Like, nothing wrong with that from my perspective. And so those agency trading desks hire demand-side platforms, which are effectively media vending machines. And these DSPs are black boxes, and in many cases, these agency trading desks just toss IOs over to the demand-side platforms to execute for them. Now, a couple of these demand-side platforms, including the one with the largest share in this country of Australia, happen to also be the world's largest media companies. And so now you've got a media company inside your agency responsible for executing this thing called buying and automation. And these companies are making massive margins, and in many cases operating technology for the sole purpose of on-ramping your business into their media. So that's a problem in and of itself, from my perspective. But the issue for you now is that these same demand-side platforms and media companies are going direct to the client because you as an agency are just a pesky thing in the middle. And since the knowledge of programmatic is very well siloed inside the agency trading desk, and since in many cases, not all by any means, the desk hasn't actually built anything differentiated on top of this demand-side platform, the agency has a very hard time articulating why the client shouldn't work directly with this demand-side platform. There was an ATD here in Sydney where the head of it told me that her clients, the agencies and the marketers themselves, were just as likely to hear about her roadmap from the DSP as they were from her, the agency trading desk. And one of the panelists just said, whoever's doing the best job in technology should succeed. I would argue that it's not the companies that we think should be doing the best job. So this is real, and it's not just about, it's not just about a lack of differentiated value being created inside the agency, it's also about trust. Our survey showed that media buying networks, or agency trading desks, are the least trusted group among these groups of companies. And ad tech companies were more trusted than agencies. I mean, give me a break. This is a problem for you, right? Because your clients are moving from relationships that they trust, or that they understand, but no longer trust, to relationships they trust but don't understand. And the ad tech vendors talk to these clients about transparency and control. So while these vendors focus your clients on avoiding you, the agency's usurious fees, or God forbid, driving some additional margin through the agency trading desk, meanwhile they're clipping 60% on the dollar. This is not sustainable, right? This is absolutely unsustainable. So what's an agency to do? From my perspective, the water's quite hot. In our analogy of the frog, you've got a talent gap, you've got a trust gap, and in many cases, you've got a genuine value gap. And you've got technology and media companies who are hell-bent on disintermediating you. So, in the spirit of clip art, take a deep breath and jump out of the fucking pot. the three things I think that an agency, media agency in particular, I have no advice for creative because I don't have any expertise, but media agencies, three things media agencies need to do in order to add material value to the client's business. The first is stick American flags at the top of your computer and huddle around machines. Sorry, no, this is just art. But the first is that this media planning function of today needs to become a very sophisticated trading function. And there's no question about that in my mind. The application of clients' audience data to the majority of campaigns, digital and otherwise, and then the consumption and analysis of the data that's thrown off the backs of those campaigns brings to mind to me a very different type of media planner or trader. And it's unclear to me that designer jeans and mani-pedis and tickets to the rugby are going to actually appeal to this group of people. So I actually think that data scientists are going to play an incredibly important role in the future of media planning and trading. The second, and we've touched on this a little bit, and this looks like Yahoo's office, but it's not, is to get much, much closer physically to your clients. And I don't mean that in the way that like you typically mean, but actually I think you're starting to see small pockets of this, but I think that in order to drive value, agencies are actually going to have to substantially embed material portions of their client teams on site with clients in the manner similar to management consulting firms of late, right? And obviously, you're an agency, everything's going to have a media and marketing bend to it. But in order to drive value, you're going to have to embed. And you're going to see more of this. So this week, I think Wunderman announced their new CEO came from Accenture, or had a background of Accenture and Deloitte. I don't mean that Accenture is the answer, because I clearly don't think that's the case. But I would expect to see more of a resemblance between media agencies and management consulting firms. And then what you need to do, from my perspective, is use that newly bolstered trading expertise, right? These data scientists, combined with the fact that you're embedded with the client, to totally de-silo media buying and use cross-channel, programmatic expertise and the data thrown off the backs of that buying to help your clients see around corners, right? You will hold all of the client's cross-channel data as an agency. And at that point, from my perspective, you're in control again. And you can marginalize Google and Facebook and other companies to where they belong, as media vendors. And you can see then why a company like Google would want to build a data management platform. Because if they can hold all of the marketers' data, then you as an agency have a more significant existential threat than you do today. So this is hard. Like, if this is the future, then think about competition for the media agencies. It's not Google and Facebook or even other holding companies or other agencies, but it's Deloitte, Accenture, it's IBM, PwC, IBM, or even more locally in Australia, it's companies like Red Planet or Quantium, who have sophisticated analytical capabilities that they've either grown or acquired. And so this is the point at which Randall throws a grenade at me and says, "That's nice, Dave, wonderful, like 3 cute slides, but where are agencies going to get the millions of dollars to fund like sophisticated traders and management consultants?" And the answer, in my opinion, is this notion of people-matic, which is, again, a made-up word, but it's racing against the machine racing with the machine rather than against the machine. And it's using your strengths as an agency and the hundreds of millions of dollars that you control to force technology and your partners to work for you rather than against you. And it's surprisingly simple. Like, I don't think that this is flying cars here. So we did a survey, recently of more than 500 agency media team members. And we asked them, what percentage of your day is spent on like non-value add activities? And it turns out that the weighted average is about 30% of their time. And we also heard loud and clear that these individuals want desperately to be doing things other than the shit that they're doing right now. This is time wasted. This is not why you hired them. And so now, let's take an agency of 100 people. All right, that is, believe it or not, 100 people. And let's say each of those people make $130,000 each. Maybe more, maybe less on average, but just bear with me. It's a $13 million cost base. 75% of the media agency, at least from the people I talk to, is media planning and media buying. So that's a $9.75 million cost base. So 30% of their time is wasted on things like cutting and pasting responses from publishers into Excel, or trafficking tags in an ad server and sending those over to publishers. Technology exists to address that, and I'm not talking about the stuff that's been in this market for the last couple of years, because I actually think that that's made your lives harder rather than easier. But I think with new technology and tools, you can literally get back that 30% of the day. And in productivity terms, which is a word I used to use at Nielsen a lot, which usually meant like firing people, but in productivity terms, and I don't mean that here, that's $3 million, and $3 million in productivity or people costs. That's $3 million that you can invest in bringing new talent or moving talent around in the organization. That's management consultants that cost $500,000. That's data scientists that cost $300,000. That's traders at $200,000. These are expensive people, but there's a lot of money here in an agency to fund that. And it's not like by doing this, you're raking your people over the coals. Like, you're talking about automated workflow that gives more visibility to buyers and sellers and better transparency up and down the supply chain. And by the way, by automating these kinds of things, you're taking a shit ton of work off your publisher, your media partners' plates in the process. And so that's the money to invest in people, right? To reshape the organization and to do the things you can't do today. Deploying data scientists to your clients to actually help them make use of all of the data they have no idea what to do with. Or investing in technology platforms that aren't vending machines and allow you to differentiate. So it's that people-matic combination, the intelligent application of scale that lets you break through barriers and gives you options. I talked about how, second thing, so that's funding. I talked about how agencies need to embed and de-silo media execution so you can deliver insights to the client. I want to give you an example of how you can build differentiation and insights and client value on top of technology that you control. And this is where you put these great people that you've hired to work and really start to go fast. And I got to be honest, I'm nervous about this because it's a strategic concept that I'm very passionate about, but it's fairly tactical. So I'm just going to ask you to bear with me through this because I know that there's some heavy hitters in this room. So I want to introduce this concept of an agency marketplace. Okay? This is a concept that puts programmatic technology to work for you in a way that no other ecosystem participant can touch. Not Google, not Facebook, not DSPs, no one. And it's, like I said, it's not actually complicated. Like, we're not talking about flying cars here. So let me explain. So first of all, the way that agencies operate today silos spend, and I'm not just talking about channel, I'm talking about even with just basic display advertising. Agencies are cutting IOs to publishers direct, and that's a process we've already decided we're going to automate. Publishers allocate a whole bunch of your inventory back to you, and then the agency cuts a separate check to the agency trading desk that buys inventory in real time and makes decisions about what ads to buy. This is today. So even if we automate the process, the direct process, you've still got insights that aren't making its way back to the same entity, the agency or the client. You've got direct insights coming back to the agency and programmatic insights sitting in the desk. So you're sitting in a silo. Inventory is still in competition with everyone, and you're not actually driving that much better results for the client. So the first thing that I think should happen, like tomorrow, is to consolidate the direct spend and the programmatic spend onto a single, open, transparent technology platform operated by a company that's not trying to disintermediate you. And the only reason it says AppNexus on there is because I actually couldn't figure out how to get it off that, because I don't give a shit who it is, as long as the company's not trying to disintermediate you, right? And I think that that's the important thing. But basically, what you do is you access all the same inventory that you had before inside a marketplace that is specific to your client and which you control. You're able to serve every single ad based on the advertiser's data. You control the performance for the advertiser. You have full visibility into the delivery across all of your media partners, and you have one source of insight for all of these campaigns, and you cut competition out in the process. The last bit, and then bear with me on this, because I actually think this is something that only 3 or 4 holding groups in the marketplace are actually able to accomplish, because you really have to use your heft to influence your media partners. In this model, rather than cutting 50 IOs to Fairfax and MI9 and MCN and Yahoo and News Corp for 50 different agency clients for effectively similar inventory month in and month out, you buy all that inventory in bulk. You're going to buy it anyway. Buy all that inventory in bulk and run all of the campaigns for all of the clients inside a marketplace that you, the agency, control. Literally every impression in this marketplace is matched to the right advertiser based on the campaign objectives as defined by you. This is programmatic on your terms, on the buyer's terms. You're now actually behaving like a publisher. You're managing all of your advertisers across all of your inventory and controlling everything, which I think drives incredible performance and reach because you make the allocation decision. You should have no trouble securing your advertisers' first-party data to come into this marketplace, because why wouldn't they want you to take advantage of that? You've eliminated competition for anyone not inside your holding company. And this can be done, and again, as more and more media becomes available digitally and can be accessed programmatically, then this becomes cross-channel. So you've got this massive pool of insights all coming inside of a marketplace. And this can be done fully transparently, right? If you pay $10 for an impression, you can charge your clients $10 for the impression. Or if you want to package your own media products off the back of this because you've created something exclusive and new and differentiated, you can do that. So I get the feeling like I know I lost a couple of people with that last bit, and I'm sorry, but I get the sense there's probably a decent chunk of you who get where I'm going with this. If you want to discuss the concept more, like get me later on this afternoon. But the point is that better performance and insights and efficiency are all within reach of you today. What I've tried to get across here is that while technology and the companies that operate it have massively disrupted things, there's a lot you can do to put technology to work for you while taking back control and creating material differentiation. With the right people and the right partners, programmatic should be an enabler for you, not a disabler or a disintermediating variable. It should be a bridge between you and your client and not a wedge. So I know I've covered some ground here this morning, but I fundamentally believe, and I always believe, that agencies can succeed by focusing on 3 core principles. Number 1 is investing in your people, right? There are millions of dollars in productivity available, and your people want this. Like, give them a meaningful challenge. Number 2 is to think and act and lead strategically. If your technology company or technology vendor is not aligned with you strategically, if the moment you step out of line, they smack you back in, dismiss them. If programmatic trading isn't a core competency for your agency, make it one. And while quick wins are possible, you have to make these investments for the long term. Like, this is going to be a very long game. My contact information is on this page. I want to thank Ashton Media for another great event, and thank all of you for your time and attention this morning. I hope everyone has a great rest of the morning. Thanks.